Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 637. Set to have its world premiere at the Sydney South by Southwest Festival is Slice of Life, the American Dream in Former Pizza Huts, a documentary that explores how former Pizza Hut buildings have been repurposed and the people who are inside them. Exploring themes of community transformation and nostalgia, Slice of Life, The American Dream in Former Pizza Huts also marks the latest film from the filmmakers Matthew Pejkovic and Rose Tucker. I'm going to say, join me now on the podcast. How are you both?
Great. Thanks for having us. Good to be with you.
It's so good for you to be with me too. And this is really fascinating because I think around 2 months ago, maybe longer, probably was longer, I went on a trip to Canberra with my family. And on the way there, we actually went past a Pizza Hut restaurant in service.
Oh,
And I saw it, and all of a sudden, when I looked at the building, and all these memories kind of come flooding back for me. I remember going there as a kid. I remember the smells and the all you can eat, services and all that kind of stuff. And it just brought back a lot of things that my kids will never know about because these Pizza Hut restaurants are few and far between, kind of making a comeback a bit in the States, but I don't know if it's going to happen here in Australia though. And I think that power of nostalgia is just really incredible, just kind of like the overwhelming sense of what kind of things that come back to me. Is that kind of like the launching point of what you guys did with this documentary? Is like what exactly was that tipping point, Matthew, when it came to getting this documentary done? Did it have to do with nostalgia? Did it have to do with something else? I'm really curious about what were the origins of this documentary.
Yeah, I think you sort of nailed it on the head. I mean, we're both kids of the 80s and 90s as well, born in Australia, but now living in America. So for us, those same Pizza Hut memories, like everyone sort of has a story of something they remember from going to Pizza Hut, the all you can eat. For you, it was always the soft serve,
well,
right?
the soft serve machine. I remember getting like stuck in a trance, pulling that lever, and just like my dad had to run over and like quickly turn it off because I built this monster tower of soft serve. And yeah, the all-you-can-eat lunch deal, that was the best.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always. Yep, yep.
And
And then when we moved to the US, we realized that these buildings are still standing all across the US, but most of them have now been turned into other things.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Some of them have been turned into other things in Australia as well, but it's really noticeable when you're in America. There's all of these buildings that are just being turned into all of these beautiful different things, and it's a bit of a meme on the internet as well. So that's kind of where we knew about it from there. But as we dug more and more into the story, we just started finding all these interesting characters, which as a documentarian is that was probably the tipping point when we realized that these places aren't just funny in the way that they've been repurposed, but there's actually really amazing people inside them.
So, Rose, when it comes to the look of a Pizza Hut building, what's really interesting to me, and you talk about in a documentary as well, the architecture of a certain decade, like 50s architecture, for example. So it's really kind of like, really dramatic and such. It really kind of stands out for you. And Pizza Hut has those things to them. The windows, for example, which someone described them as Pizza Hut slices, like in the film. I've never heard that term before, right? It's really interesting. So and as soon as you see a building, you know exactly what it is, you know its identity and everything that comes with that. And that's kind of been lost over the decades, right? I think when it comes to buildings, eateries, even houses, there's kind of like a plain Jane kind of aspect to it, whereas the Pizza Hut buildings, they definitely have that. What does that they say to you in regards to the, you know, evolution of architecture when it comes to these kind of buildings that as soon as we see those windows, we know exactly what they are. And these days, we don't really have that anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head in that it was during the 50s when everyone was starting to drive cars. Like everyone's suddenly out on the highways, out on the roads. And if you wanted people to stop at your restaurant, you needed to stand out. So that this is the period of time where you see McDonald's doing the golden arches and other chains start building those replicable buildings that are designed to catch attention quickly for people who are flying down the road. So Pizza Hut came a little after those sort of 50s style buildings, which were super flamboyant, lots of things shooting off into the sky. And then things start to get toned down just a little bit, but Pizza Hut's in that nice little middle ground where it's still a super distinctive building. And yes, the pizza slices, the pizza slice windows, I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but it's a nice nice little connection for sure. Pizza Hut built those buildings all through the like 60s, 70s into the 80s, and in the 90s it started moving towards a more modern design. They lost the trapezoid windows, they went to rectangular windows, but they did keep the hut roof. That sort of has stuck around. But they built so many of these trapezoid window buildings that, yeah, particularly across the US, you can still see them everywhere.
So Matthew, there's this movie that I love. It's called The Founder. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It stars Michael Keaton. He's a bloke who franchised McDonald's, and there's a line in the movie. It's always stuck with me ever since I watch it, where he talks about his kind of like priority was to make sure there's just as many golden arcs in America as there were, like crucifixes in churches. He wanted to make that to be the ultimate kind of American symbol. And it does say something in that when it comes to like a church or a restaurant, whether it be a fast food eatery or whatever, there's a sense of communion. People sitting down at dinner at a table with other people doing the kind of same thing as well. And a lot of these eateries that are in the movie, whether it be like Big Ed's Barbecue or like Jesus' kind of taco place, they still have that kind of stuff. In another context, there is a church that's been transformed in Florida as well. Do you think another reason why there's a lot of kind of nostalgia towards these places is because there's a sense of community that came with it? You actually were out with other people, with your own people, but other people as well, and everyone was just in one spot at the same time. And while not eating necessarily together, we were kind of eating together. It's that
Yeah,
kind of thing there.
I think very much so. I think, if there's this concept of the third place, this idea that we have a place traditionally where we live with our family, a place where we work to earn money, and then this third place. And the third place can be a pub, the third place can be a restaurant, the third place can be a cafe. I guess nowadays the third place is often online. But I think Pizza Hut was really part of, for a certain generation, that was that third place. And it's been really interesting to watch, often when Pizza Huts opened up in a town, it meant that basically that town got a Pizza Hut. That was a big deal to a lot of smaller towns. It meant we got the Pizza Hut, not the town over, we got it. And so I think it meant that those places had a lot of pride, especially for smaller towns in America. And then when they went, there was a little bit of a hole left that, ironically, a lot of these places that repurposed the Pizza Huts still kept that spirit of. So I think, an obvious one is the restaurants, right? So like Taco Jesus, Big Ed's Barbecue, those are meeting points for the community. But in surprising ways as well, like the Bud Hut cannabis dispensary in Colorado. I know that Barb, who owns the Bud Hut, she remembers the Pizza Hut. She knew how important it was to her history, and so she kind of honored that when they turned it into even a cannabis dispensary can be a meeting point for the community.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. Rose, as I've gotten older, the aspect of focusing on what is local has become more important. Local politics, local gatherings, local what have you. Because I think when you're younger, you have a priorities, you have a dream to change the world. You can't change the world by taking on the world. You have to start from where you are, and that's where your world is. And I think when it comes to small business owners, that is something that's vitally important as well. And I think with a lot of what I'm watching in your documentary, when I watch Slice of Life, the importance of community and having a small business, not only run by people who are in the community, but a place where people from the community can go there and they can shop there and they can gather, is vastly important. Do you think that now more than ever, that perhaps people are taking the issue of small business, of small gatherings, of local community more serious than they did before, especially since we just come from a time not that long ago when we had to be sequestered in our own little places and and we couldn't hang out anymore. And now I think I'm hoping anyway, that more than ever that the aspect of what is local stands out more than anything else. And I think this is what you really do see in your documentary with these repurposed kind of Pizza Hut restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like where we're living in New York, there's this almost people don't want to shop or eat at a chain anymore, right? It's all about the independent mum and pop run restaurants and businesses. Like shop local is a phrase used in New York. Like it's very much encouraged and it's what people do. And we're seeing that all across the US, 100%. We love that all of the businesses we filmed with are, independent. They, maybe had even really tough times getting those businesses off the ground. But then when they succeed, the community does want to support them, and places like Big Ed's now are so popular that they might have to move to a bigger venue. It is also about that social aspect as well, like Yup's Karaoke Bar. They're a bar in the South, and they're aware of the sort of connotations that can come along with that. They like to, as they say, be a ripple, not a tsunami, in that they are very much about equality, diversity. They celebrate that, and they know that that's kind of a unique thing in their part of the world. And they see that they're doing their own little small part to, be the change that you want to see, as I think Krista says. It was really inspiring to see how all of these little independent businesses are doing their bit to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and just on that quickly, in a way, we sort of see ourselves as sort of small business owners as well. Like the world of the independent filmmaker is, like we still have a day job doing commercial jobs to get to pay the rent so that we can go off and make these films. And, both of our parents had, small businesses of their own. So we sort of really, I think it's actually, we interviewed Dan Carney, the founder of Pizza Hut, in the movie. He points out that like, kind of everyone else wanted to just go work for a company, work for a corporation, but it sort of takes a unique breed of person that wants to go into it for themselves. Obviously there are rewards, but there are a lot of challenges as well. So that was really central to the story that we wanted to tell with this film.
Well, and I was going to actually bring up that point as well, is that myself as a independent content creator and film critic and such, I used to work for a lot of kind of like big fish kind of like companies and such as well, but I think what I'm seeing happening now across a lot of different spheres, in whether it be in media, film, small business, is that it seems to be not a revolution, but a little bit of a revolt against kind of like the big conglomerate kind of stuff. Like I know you guys have been away for some time, being in New York, but in Australia, a big thing in Australia here is kind of like how the big two supermarket chains, and Coles and Woolies, have really just dominated things. And we talk about nostalgia. One thing I'm sure we all remember as well, once upon a time in our own suburbs, we had the milk bar, the little news agency, the little like place where you get like your milk and bread, what have you. Now that's been taken over because the local Coles has come in. It's pretty much like our class price everyone, right? And my hope is as well, when it comes back to that local aspect, not only in my community, of like my suburb, where hopefully some of these things can come back. And there are some places now, like in my community, like eateries and such, small things, which is, and that's great to see. But I'm also hoping that when it comes to my other community, which is the film world and such, that more people not only create more stuff independently, but more people focus and invest in things independent as well. So I always say in my my podcast interviews, I tell everyone, go to the cinemas and watch independent film, because the only way you're going to break kind of like, the stagnation of like really big kind of like blockbuster, superhero movie, nonsense and all that, is by watching the smaller ones and films, and, spread the wealth around a bit. And I always say that as well with what you watch, what you read and such as well. And to me, it just seems like, I think anyway, or I hope, maybe it's more of a hope, that going smaller and investing in those the little guy more than like into the big monster, I think it will go a long way. And I think Slice of Life really just taps into that in a certain way. Anyway, that's a kind of like observation I go for. I don't know, Matthew, if that's what you kind of take away from this as well.
Well, it's very interesting, because I feel like what we were trying to say with exactly that side of the film is reflected in the way we make movies. So like, it's just Rose and me. We literally are the entire crew. We do all of our post-production, and we even do all of the distribution. And to that end, after we screen at South by Southwest Sydney, we're actually going into cinemas across Australia, I think starting November 7.
And we are making a point of partnering with independent cinemas. So, in South Australia, we've got Wallace, family-run business that's been operating in South Australia for a really long time. We've got Dendy on board, and then, they've got cinemas in Sydney, in Brisbane, Canberra, but they're small. They're still technically independent cinemas. We've got the Thornbury Picture House in Melbourne.
Yep, that's right. And so we sort of see this film as being a way to represent small businesses on screen, made by small-time independent filmmakers, playing on independent cinema screens. So there's sort of like a lineage that go through the whole film.
It's really hard, like for a cinema to take a chance on an independent film. I get it; it's risky. So for these guys to get on board and support us, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and we haven't, we've still got our premiere coming up on the weekend, but even just the little bit of press and the little bit of talking to people we've done so far, I think shows that there is an interest in things. It's kind of ironic in a way because this film is sort of about the two sides of that coin. It's about a big company like Pizza Hut that had a very big impact on American on the American economy, but then also these little businesses that sort of like play alongside them. And I think it is an interesting way to look at that whole conversation.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. But the interesting thing when you speak to Dan Carney in the movie, and I think it goes back to other things as well, maybe like the McDonald's brothers as well. These places start off as one place, as a small place in Kansas of all places, like a pizza place, right? And then they open up, and of course he does kind of branch out and such. But he was saying in the film, when they sold to Pepsi, there was a certain soul that was sold as well. And while that's why we kind of remember the pizza out of sauce, by the time we got to it, like with our generation, it was already part of the big kind of machine kind of thing. But it's important for people to realize that these things do start off as these small businesses as well. And I think that's there's nothing wrong with someone making a successful goal of having a small business. We're not saying that at all. But I just hope that as you spoke before, Rose, about the diversity and such as well, the diversity is also in the business world as well. And I think like local small businesses, like the ones you see in your film, are very vital that those places like stick around. And for all intents and purposes, like the karaoke place, for example, that's been around longer than the Pizza Hut was before. That karaoke place has been around for like 30 years, right?
Yeah, over 30 years. So it's been a karaoke place much longer than it was a Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that one was ever a Pizza Hut because it's been Yups for so long.
Yes, exactly right. I know that when it comes to be documentary filmmakers, the rule is you cannot interfere with the subject. You got to let it go. But I think it would be incredibly hard that when you're in a Big Ed's barbecue, you cannot, partake in the food there. Because one thing about when I watch your films, and Matt, you and I spoke years ago when barbecue came out as well. Is that you do deal with food in a certain way. The way you shoot food looks absolutely gorgeous. I couldn't help but get hungry while watching the movie. At one end, I was like, oh, I could do but when I saw the Big Ed's barbecue, I was like, oh God, I rather that. Is it hard not to partake in Big Ed's barbecue? Is it hard not to just drop everything you're doing with Pizza Hut and just stick to Big Ed's? I'm sure Big Ed's was a very comfy place to be in because they seem like nice people, but also the food looked gorgeous as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, our first film was about barbecue culture around the world, so we didn't mind putting a little nod to the first film in this one. Oh, look, we've gotten used to it over the years. I think the way we shoot food is we shoot food from the point of view of people who like food. So I think, yeah, but it's well, I'll tell you what though, it was balanced with was everyone was so nice that no one we always go, no, let us buy something from you, and it's like, no, the platter's already been prepared.
Don't worry. We got to try everything. That's the thing about people in hospitality. They are hospitable. So
Yeah.
Big Ed's put together a beautiful platter of barbecue for us to try. Similarly at Nico Oysters and Seafoods, we got to eat some beautiful French seafood dishes.
Yeah, they were like, well, you guys got to try some oysters. And then it's like, oh, we'll just try a few. It's like, no, we have to try some oysters. And then I think even Nico himself, he actually owns a few restaurants in the area. And he's like, oh, no, there's a reservation for you tonight at the sister restaurant.
Yeah.
So like we were, Americans, it was, as you know, our previous films were shot around the world. This one was focused entirely on America. And one thing I'll say is Americans have a great sense of humor. You just let them talk and they spin a yarn like none other, and then they are also about the most hospitable people you can find. So it was we're independent filmmakers. We're traveling. It's long work days, but it was pretty nice to get to know some of these subjects as well.
So you got the premiere coming up this weekend, and for people they can go to the South by Southwest website, which is southbysouthwestsydney.com, and there you go to schedule. And I really recommend people do check out Slice of Light as well. Watch it in the cinema over there. It is coming out here November 7. When So you're back now in Australia, and I know that you guys, like when it comes to documentary subjects, you've been around the world, and now you've done America as well. You went around America, did a big road trip. You did that with Slice of Life. Any thoughts about doing something local here in Australia? Any ideas come to mind? Trying to do maybe some documentaries and subjects here closer to home, or like not New York, but like Adelaide, or perhaps
Yeah.
somewhere else in Australia.
I think for us, it's interesting. We sort of had this very backwards world in which we're very lucky in that we shot a giant global films and then have started localizing. And with Slice of Life, we had this unique opportunity where we'd been living in America for 8 years, and I felt kind of had a good understanding of the layout of the land and the kind of stories we wanted to tell, but we're still really new to the country. And so, like, I always think of it as being a bit similar to Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas, when he traveled throughout that country with just these new set of eyes, finding interest where maybe nobody else saw it. So we were like, that's a unique opportunity we have now. I think the next unique opportunity we're going to have is to be Australians that have lived, most of our life in Australia, but have been away. So when we come back to Australia, we have these fresh eyes on Australia. I don't know what that story is, but I do want to, over the next few years, potentially take advantage of that chance we have for a different perspective.
For sure. Last question here, and Rose, I'm going to ask you this one. Throughout the movie, the participants in the film, they talk about their philosophies, whether it be business, life, community. When it comes to your text films, the film company you guys have, what's the philosophies that you guys have moving forward, do you think? What's the philosophies that you have in regards to what documentaries you want to make, and what type of documentaries you think you want to make moving forward?
Oh, good question. I think it's sort of reflected in Slice of Life. It's sort of like a hopeful version of humanity. I think all three of our films sort of meet that criteria. We like to sort of, show people, celebrate differences, but at the heart of it, we all have a lot more in common than we don't. So than what we have, what's different. So, yeah, I think, and particularly, with Slice of Life being a portrait of America, like we all see the news. It's presented as a very disparate group of people. There's a lot of aggravation, a lot of politics, that kind of thing. And we wanted to cut through all that and show that, people across the country, no matter what their politics might be, can still be great people. So I think, it's that hopeful version of humanity is kind of what we're looking to do with our work.
Well, that's I think you guys have really knocked it out the ballpark here in regards to that. And for everyone out there listening, Slice of Life, South by Southwest Festival. Again, go to SXSWsydney.com. October 19 is when the premiere is going to be on in Sydney. I really recommend everyone check out the film. Either eat something before you go there, or have something reserved to go eat afterwards, because you will get hungry, as I did when I was watching this film. And Matthew and Rose, I thank you so very much for your time today. Congratulations with the film. And I can't wait for people to see it. And November 7th, of course, is the release date when it comes out theatrically. And everyone out there, I have to say again, watch this film in cinemas when it comes out. Support independent filmmakers, support independent cinemas as well. And again, Matthew and Rose, thank you so very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.